Just to have you think about something. The devil took him up to a high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their magnificence and said, all these I give to you. Does that ever just make you just stop and think that whoever has the kingdoms of the world, whoever seeks to amass all kinds of wonderful things, who gives it to him? Who gives it to him? This passage says it was the devil. So you ask an honest question in the Gospel of Luke, how difficult it is for the rich to love. I'm not preaching on that tonight. I thought it whet your appetite. Okay. Over the next 90 days, Lent and Easter, I'm going to touch into the Eucharist, why you're here, how to enter into this experience. So I'm going to touch into it so that when we come into the readings about the Eucharist there in the Easter season, I want them to explode in your hand. I don't want to take you on the surface. I want to plunge you deeper, so I need to do a little work beforehand to really understand what this mystery is all about as best you can, how to enter into it, okay? Now, the gospel, the first reading and the gospel reading, the devil was hanging around. And so what was he basically saying to Adam and Eve and the human person and Jesus? It was very simple. He was saying, listen, you don't need God. You don't need God to live in this space here, the human story. You just don't need him. You could pull this off yourself, you know. So don't worry about it. You know, you have the ability to make it and pull it off yourself and deal with the brokenness and the absurdity of human existence in life. You can do it yourself. And they bought the Kool-Aid. And they said, okay, that's what it's about. It's all about control. It's all about self-reliance. I could do this myself. And the devil came and asked the same thing to Jesus. You don't need your Father. In fact, listen, if you try to prove to me certain things, you're going to show he's not that great anyway. So why don't you just do it yourself? Self-reliance. And what Jesus said back to him, he said, listen, I don't want to say anything, but get out of my face. Because I got something, I got a purpose, I got a mission to do, and I don't want to be distracted by controlling life. I don't want to be distracted by just sort of saying I could deal with this myself, you know? So let's look at the Eucharist in light of this, okay? If you come here week after week, or whenever you come, and you're full of yourself, because you've been practicing all week control and self-reliance, you're going to end up blocking the working of God in this moment, in this sacred moment. Just going to block it. I bet you didn't realize you had that kind of power, that you could actually block the working of God in your life. And so you got to say then, how do we prepare for this mystery, which is God's time, which is God's space? It's not our mystery, it's his mystery. You just have the privilege to try to enter into it. We think it's our time. You know, I hear sometimes people say, oh, I'm bored. I said, please, you're telling them too much about yourself. Because you're basically saying, well, you're telling me you don't know how to participate, how to enter mystery, because your only stance in life is to control. Because once you enter the mystery, you're never bored. You lose your sense of time. But the question is, how do we enter this mystery? How do we prepare for it? You came here tonight. How did you prepare for this unique encounter with your God so you can release his power of love? How do you sustain yourself in it? How do you relate in it? And then how do you leave from it? If you don't understand that, most likely you're going to come here full of yourself, you're going to leave full of yourself, and nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change. Isn't that amazing? That I could come week after week and nothing's going to change. If you left your house as a pain in the neck, you're going back in your house as a pain in the neck. It's that simple, okay? So let's look at it. There are two mysteries in life, only two, that will help you to empty yourself. And they're tied together. Two mysteries in life, because you got to empty yourself in preparation during in order to allow yourself to be filled by his love. And those two mysteries are love and suffering. They're the only two mysteries that completely empty yourself. When you're loving somebody, you're emptying yourself. You're pouring yourself into the mystery of who they are. When you're suffering, you are just trying to grasp and to hold on and to deal with and cope with the pain or the mental anguish or the emotional inflamed, All your energy spent up. A woman the other day was talking to me, and she, as a little girl, had lupus, and now she just got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. MS. And I said, you're empty. You've been dealing with a chronic illness all your life. You're empty. And guess what she said to me? How come no one ever told me that? How come no one ever told me I was empty? How come all the doctors I went to never told me I was empty? Because it takes all that energy. So you have very little to give of yourself when you're suffering. Very little. But it's a blessing and a grace and a gift, because there's no difference in the movement of what it's seeking to try to do than love itself, okay? So what's the first thing you need to do in preparing yourself to enter into the mystery of suffering? Of this Eucharist, the mystery of experiencing God's love. You got to practice being in a loving stance. You got to practice being in a loving stance so you could begin that movement of emptying yourself out so you're not full of yourself. The difficulty is when we start to empty ourselves up, we get nervous and we start filling ourselves. So all of a sudden, when we seek to try to love somebody, it becomes tainted with expectation. It becomes tainted with all kinds of junk that we place on it. And then we end up hassling each other because somehow the person's not doing what we think they should do or give to us what we think they should give to us. That's not love. It's a practical dependency. So we taint it. So what I'm encouraging you to do is what I did as a little boy. When we had to come to receive communion, we had to fast when we went to bed, that night, and we fast until we went to communion. But our Lord said, I don't want that kind of fast. I think Isaiah's been talking about it this past week in the readings. He said, what I want you to do is I want you to love. So your fasting to prepare yourself to enter the mystery is to try to love. Now, sometimes you have a bad week, You're so self-wrapped. You're just so self-wrapped. So I'm just saying to you, maybe Friday night, try it. Try to move towards the love. Maybe Saturday. If you can't make it either Friday night or Saturday night, maybe if you're going to come 6 o'clock, try it sometime Sunday. In other words, try it somewhere, someplace where you're seeking to try to love. Forget yourself, die to yourself, and focus on someone else without any expectation of return. Love them for them. Try that. So the first step of preparation is to begin the process of emptying yourself, okay? The second step in this preparing to enter this mystery is you need to read the Word proclaimed on Sunday. You need to read it once, twice, 3 times. You need to pray with it. You need to wrestle with it. You need to have it alive within you when you walk in here and you hear the word. So what does it do? It explodes inside of you, just explodes inside of you. It's almost like an atomic bomb going off inside because it's on fire, it's alive. If you walk in here without hearing the word, or at least having a chance to wrestle with it, most of the times, by the time you sort of get into it, you've already missed it. And the word is so important because what the word is basically saying to you is, this is what my love looks like. This is what the mission that I've given you looks like. So you need to hear it. He definitely listens to you, but he needs to speak to you too. He's aching for a relationship, okay? So that piece there, hearing the word. So if you begin to empty yourself by loving, you want to start filling yourself with his word, not yourself, okay? That's number 1. Number 2. Number 3 is how you dress is important when you come into the space. What you wear is important. This is not a beauty contest. We're not saying you have to wear your whatever. What we're saying is the intentionality of going to your closet and making a decision what you're going to wear says to you that this is important. This is not a gym. This is not a Starbucks coffee gathering. It's not, I hate to tell you. And so therefore, you come in casual, by the time you finally wake up, it's already past you. You've got to be much more intentional. And going and getting dressed. Let me give you a couple examples. When I was in South Africa, I went to the townships, and I really had a chance to see poverty and tremendous oppression. But it was amazing. I celebrated Mass 2 times. And as I was celebrating Mass, people started coming into church, and I was sort of taken back. No, these people didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, but they wore their Sunday best. They wore their Sunday best. And they probably kept it all safe during the week, and they took it out and they wore it. And they wore the same outfit every week, but it was their Sunday best because they were saying, this is important. And they enter the whole experience with an unbelievable energy. Unbelievable energy. When I go to Eucharist, when I'm away on vacation or away on sabbatical, I go to Eucharist, I always go to my closet, get a nice pair of slacks, and get a nice shirt. It's an intentionality. This is important. This is the most important meeting. It's the most important gathering. It's the most important encounter of my week. It's saying to me, this is important. This is not a rollover opportunity. So I ask you to look at that, because that tells you whether something's important or not. If you were going to an important meeting, or an important encounter with somebody, you just sort of roll over in it. I see young adults going out to a bar hoping to meet somebody, and they're dressed with their Sunday best. Do you hear what I'm saying to you? So that's another piece, intentionality. And then when you walk through the door, you put your fingers or hand into the holy water fountains. Now, that's a proclamation. It's one of the most important acts as you go into the church. God, we're born with God within us. He's with us. You're born with him. If you didn't have God within you, you wouldn't exist. So baptism is not getting God. You don't get God. You already got God. What baptism is, and it's unbelievable when you really think about what it is and understand the mystery of that. It means you have already plunged deeply into the mystery of the God that's within you, in and through sign, ritual, and symbol. You plunge deeply. So you already have experienced in and through your baptism what's going to immediately happen to you once you die. What did you experience in your baptism? Whether you're a little baby or a big adult, you experienced the following: that you are totally loved, that you completely are cherished and you are so precious in God's eyes. You are totally loved. But even more important, you're completely one with God already. You can't be even more one with God in your tomorrows. You are completely one with God. And not only one with God, you are completely one with all that is. Every person ever existed. You're one with them already. But you don't know it. So when you die, you're going to be surprised. And you're going to say to God, why didn't anyone tell me this? That's what you experienced. And the reason why you experienced it is one simple faith statement. You have been predestined before the world was formed to be the living and loving presence, to reveal the face of God to others in this time. You've been chosen. Your parents didn't choose it. They opened themselves to a prompting inside themselves to have you baptized. As an adult, you didn't choose it. God chose you. You've been chosen to reveal the very face of God. You have a destiny. You have a purpose. So when you go and you put your hand in the holy water founts, you are proclaiming again, I am the beloved of God, and that I have a purpose, a mission, and a destiny. I know what I'm called to do. So it's a reminder that you're loved. And as you enter deeply into that mystery of how much you are loved, you will stop begging at people's table for scraps of love. You'll stop crawling on your hands and your knees just to grab a little scrap of love. You'll finally stand up and be able to celebrate the fact of who you are and what you're about. You'll stop groveling at people's life to say, please, will you like me? Will you love me? Will you do? Stop. Because you are already loved. That's your destiny. That's your purpose. So when you dip it in, I want you to say the following: Lord, thank you for loving me. Thank you for loving me. That's what the sign of the cross is. But thank you for choosing me from all time to be your living presence in this time. So you enter into the community with that in mind, being emptied, because he needs to use you, okay? And then what? Hospitality, hospitality, hospitality. People say, well, Father Tom, I got to get ready. I got to start praying. Most of the prayers when you begin service, to be honest with you, are basically all prayers about yourself. You're filling yourself. The only thing you need to do is to love, because love is the only way you're going to empty yourself in this experience. Do you hear it? Love is the only thing you need to do. So you need to greet people. You need to talk to people. You got to relate to people. This is not just a me and Jesus experience. You got to get out of your way and begin to reach out. So you got to continue to empty yourself. The loving you started out before you came in, it has to be continued. So hospitality is a tremendous key to this, that I begin then to enter this mystery. And then we'll go into those other parts. We'll go into the pieces of the Eucharist. But there's an overlying piece that you need to continue to be sensitive to. It's called loving participation. You participate not because you like to do it or don't like to do it. You participate because it's an act of love for the people that are with you. If you want to think of a race car, every once in a while I watch the racing that goes around the circle like that. And what they do is they get behind each other, and the front car drafts the car in back of it. So all of a sudden what happens? They're being drafted, then all of a sudden they could spring out and go. When you participate in a loving way, when you are basically saying, I'm there for others in this community, you're going to draft other people into that experience. It's an act of love. And if you draft them into the experience, they may enter the experience also, but they see what you do, because they may engage in an act of love. So loving participation is the key to continue to empty yourself. Now, there's other parts of the Mass that we'll talk about that will continue to empty yourself. You need to empty yourself and not fill yourself with yourself. Because as soon as you start that, you stop the process. You stop the process of God loving you. You stop it. Once you stop loving in the experience, it's over. You might as well leave. So you've got to be in a loving stance through the whole experience. Reaching out, participating. Not for yourself, but for others. Because they need you to witness to them and to help them enter into the mystery. And then leaving. You got to continue to be in a loving stance. You receive the intimacy of his love. The Amen says, I believe I'm being filled with love itself. I believe in filled. It's amazing how many people, as soon as they receive, they cap it. I don't get it. You need to continue to be in a loving stance. So when you leave in a bad mood,